It started like any other morning, the kind that feels ordinary until it suddenly isn't. My daughter had been complaining about stomach pain for 2 days, but I kept convincing myself it was something minor. Maybe food, maybe stress, maybe just a passing illness. She was only 7, too small to understand why her body was suddenly betraying her, too young to be sitting in a hospital hallway holding onto my hand like it was the only stable thing in the world. By noon, everything changed. The doctor's face said it before his words did. Tests, scans, urgency. Then the sentence that froze my chest, she needs surgery today. After that, everything became motion. Paperwork, signatures, consent forms, phone calls I barely remember making. My mind kept trying to deny it, like if I refused to fully accept the situation, it wouldn't become real. But it was real, and I was alone. That was the first crack in everything I thought I knew about my life. I called my parents because instinctively, that's what I had always done in emergencies. No matter how old I got, no matter how independent I became, a part of me still believed they would show up when it truly mattered. My father answered on the second ring. "What is it?" he asked, irritated like I was interrupting something important. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it broke halfway through. "It's my daughter. She needs surgery. I'm at the hospital alone. Can you come here? Just for a few hours. I need someone to stay with her while I handle everything." There was a pause. Not concern, not urgency, just inconvenience. Then my mother's voice came on the line, sharp and immediate. "Hospital? Again? We told you not to panic over every little thing." "It's not little," I said quickly. "The doctors said," but she cut me off. "We are not coming. We have things to do. You are her mother. Handle it." I blinked, trying to process her tone. I can't be in 2 places at once. She's scared. I'm scared. My father sighed loudly in the background. "Don't dramatize it. Hospitals are full of nurses. That's their job." Something inside me tightened painfully. "She's 7. I whispered. "She just needs someone familiar with her, just for a while." That was when my mother said the words that I will never forget for as long as I live. "She is your responsibility, not ours." A silence followed. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that feels like something breaking without sound. I remember looking at my daughter through the glass of the waiting area while she sat curled on a chair, hugging her knees. She was trying to be brave. She kept looking at me every few seconds like she was afraid I would disappear if she didn't check. And in that moment, I realized something I wasn't ready to admit. She already felt abandoned. I swallowed hard and tried one last time. "Please, I'm not asking for money or anything big. Just sit with her, talk to her. She trusts you." There was another pause. Then my father again, colder this time. We said no, stop calling. And the line went dead just like that. No hesitation, no guilt, no second thought. I stood there, holding the phone against my ear long after the call ended, staring at the blank screen like it might suddenly change its answer if I waited long enough. But it didn't. Around me, the hospital kept moving. Nurses walked past. Monitors beeped. Life continued in a rhythm that didn't care about my breaking point. My daughter's name was called for pre-surgery preparation. A nurse gently asked me to come closer. My legs felt heavy, like I was walking through water. I knelt beside my daughter and tried to smile. She looked up at me, eyes wide and nervous. "Are you staying with me?" That question destroyed whatever strength I had left. I brushed her hair back and nodded even though my voice almost failed. "I'm right here," because I was. But I also wasn't. I was a mother signing consent forms with shaking hands, a daughter who had just been reminded that love and her family had conditions, and a woman standing at the edge of a decision she didn't yet understand she had already made. As they rolled my daughter toward the operating room, she reached for me one last time. I held her hand until the very last second, and when the doors closed between us, I realized something terrifying. I was completely alone in a moment that should have never been faced alone at all. The doors closed with a soft mechanical sound, but in my mind it felt like a slam, like something final sealing shut. For a few seconds, I stayed frozen in the exact spot where my daughter's hand had last touched mine. My palm still felt warm, as if she had only just let go and might come running back at any moment saying it was all a mistake, that they wouldn't take her after all. But hospitals don't undo things, they proceed. I stood in the hallway outside the operating room, surrounded by people who were all busy living their own emergencies. A nurse passed by carrying charts. A doctor spoke quietly into a phone. Somewhere down the corridor, a child was crying. Life didn't pause for pain. It only made room for it in the background, and I was stuck in that background. I sat down on a plastic chair that felt too small for the weight I was carrying. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, so I pressed them together tightly, as if pressure alone could keep me from falling apart. My phone lay on my lap. I stared at it. No messages, no missed calls, no "Are you okay?" Not even a single meaningless check-in. Just silence from the people who were supposed to be my foundation. I refreshed the screen once, twice. Nothing changed. My parents had already decided their absence, not in a moment of confusion, not in misunderstanding, but in choice. That realization didn't arrive all at once. It came in waves, each one colder than the last. I tried to focus on anything else. The ticking clock, the distant announcements, the smell of disinfectant that clung to everything like a reminder that this place existed for moments people prayed they would never enter. But my mind kept going back to my daughter's face, her eyes when she asked if I would stay, her grip tightening on my hand, her small attempt to be brave because she didn't want to make me more scared. I pressed my fist against my mouth, trying to hold everything in. Time in hospitals is strange. It doesn't move forward in a straight line. It stretches, it loops, it freezes and then suddenly rushes forward just to remind you it was never under your control. Minutes felt like hours, hours felt like something beyond language. At some point, I stood up and walked to the surgery waiting board. I read the status, even though I already knew what it would say. In progress. Those two words felt like a verdict. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. I tried to pray, even though I wasn't sure who I was talking to anymore. I tried bargaining with the universe in the quietest way possible, like silence might make it listen more carefully. "Just let her be okay," I whispered. "Please, I'll handle the rest. Just let her come out." But silence doesn't answer either. My phone finally buzzed once. My heart jumped so hard it hurt. I grabbed it instantly, expecting anything. But it was just a notification, a reminder I had forgotten to cancel, something meaningless, something normal. And that normality felt insulting. I looked around the hallway, almost absurdly, like maybe my parents had changed their minds and would suddenly appear at the end of it. My father walking in with his usual stern expression, my mother acting like nothing had happened, as if they had never said those words. But the hallway stayed empty of them. That was when it hit me again harder this time. They were not coming. Not because they couldn't, because they chose not to. A nurse came out briefly from the operating room and spoke quietly to someone at the desk. I caught only fragments, stable, monitoring, careful progress, words that were supposed to calm but instead sharpened my anxiety. I wanted to ask 100 questions, but I didn't. I just nodded like I understood anything at all. Then I returned to my chair and waited and broke in silence, At some point, I realized I hadn't spoken out loud in over an hour. My throat felt dry, my chest tight, like my body had started holding emotions physically because it had nowhere else to put them. I thought about calling someone else, a friend, a relative, anyone, but my fingers didn't move, because deep down I already knew what I needed. And what I wouldn't get? Support, presence, a simple human "I'm here." Instead, I had emptiness on both ends of the line. The surgery board still said the same thing. In progress, and I understood something sitting there alone in that corridor, surrounded by strangers who cared more than my own blood did. This wasn't just about today. It was about every time I had been told to be strong instead of being helped. Every time my feelings had been minimized. Every time I had been made to feel like asking for support was asking for too much. But nothing compared to this moment, because this wasn't about me anymore. This was about my daughter lying on a table, trusting the world to hold her safe, while the people who claimed to love her chose to stand away from it. And I sat there, staring at the operating room doors, realizing that the silence around me was not empty. It was full of answers I didn't want to accept. The days after the surgery blurred together like a half-erased memory. My daughter survived. Those two words should have brought relief immediately, cleanly, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. But instead, they came wrapped in exhaustion, fear, and a long recovery that tested every piece of strength I thought I had left. The doctor explained everything slowly, how the surgery went, what complications could have happened, what we needed to watch for now. I nodded through most of it, but my mind kept drifting back to that moment outside the operating room. The silence, the waiting, the realization that I had been alone in every sense that mattered. When I finally saw her again, she looked smaller than I remembered. Pale, tired, fragile in a way that made my chest ache, but she smiled when she saw me. That smile almost destroyed me more than anything else. "Am I okay now?" she whispered. I forced my voice to stay steady. "Yes, baby, you're okay, you're safe." And I meant it, but I also didn't feel it yet. Recovery was slow. Pain medication schedules, follow-up visits, nights where she woke up crying and I had to sit beside her bed, holding her hand until she fell asleep again. I barely rested. I barely ate. I moved through days like I was running on fumes, but I kept going because there was no other option. And still through all of it, there was nothing from my parents, no visit, no call, no message asking how she was doing. At first, I told myself they were waiting for the situation to settle. Maybe they didn't know what to say. Maybe they assumed everything was handled. But as days turned into a week and then two, the excuses stopped working. The truth was simple. They had chosen distance. One evening, after my daughter finally fell into a deep sleep, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at a cold cup of tea I had forgotten to drink hours earlier. My body felt heavy, like every movement required effort I didn't have anymore. That's when my phone rang. Their name appeared on the screen. My mother. For a moment, I just stared at it. I didn't answer immediately. Something in me hesitated, not fear, not anger exactly, but something deeper, awareness. I finally picked up. Her voice came through quickly, almost rushed. "We heard about the surgery. Why didn't you tell us it was serious?" I almost laughed, but it came out as a breath instead. "I did tell you. You chose not to come." A pause, then my father's voice in the background, sharper. "Don't start this again. We didn't understand it was an emergency." I closed my eyes. I said she was going into surgery. Another pause. Longer this time. Then my mother again, softer but still distant. "Well, she's okay now, right?" That question did something strange inside me. Not anger, clarity. "She survived." I said quietly, "But she needed you then, not now." Silence followed again, but this time it felt different. Less ignorance, more discomfort, and in that silence I realized something important. They weren't calling because they cared. They were calling because they were uncomfortable with consequences. After that call ended, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call them back. I just sat there in the dark kitchen for a long time, listening to the refrigerator hum like the only steady thing in the world. And slowly, something shifted inside me, not hatred, not revenge, something quieter, decision. In the following weeks, I started noticing things I had ignored for years. The way I was always the one reaching out first. The way my feelings were minimized unless they affected others. The way my needs were treated like interruptions rather than part of a relationship. I had always told myself that family meant endurance, that you forgive, you adjust, you absorb. But sitting beside my daughter's hospital bed every night, watching her recover from something she never should have faced alone, I began to understand something I had avoided my entire life. Love without presence is not love at all. It is convenience. One afternoon, while my daughter was sleeping peacefully for the first time in days, I received another message from my parents. This time it wasn't about the surgery. It was about themselves. My father's health wasn't well. Financial pressure. Stress, things were falling apart. And then came the words that changed everything. We need your help. I stared at the screen for a long time. This was the moment I had unconsciously been preparing for. The roles had shifted. They were now the ones asking for presence, for support, for care, for the very thing they had denied me when I needed it most. And I finally understood the weight of choice. Because now, I had one too. Their message came like an echo from a different life. We need your help. I read it once, then again, not because I didn't understand it, but because I did. And I needed to make sure the understanding didn't soften into old habits. The habit of forgiving too quickly, the habit of rushing in to fix things that were never treated with care in return. My daughter was finally sleeping peacefully that evening. The kind of sleep that comes after pain starts to fade, when the body finally believes it is safe again. I sat beside her bed for a while, watching her breathe evenly, her small hand curled near her blanket like she was still holding on to me even in rest. That sight steadied me more than anything else, because it reminded me what mattered, not pride, not family reputation, not the fear of being labeled cold or ungrateful. Her, always her. My phone buzzed again. Another message followed the first. My mother this time, more detailed, more emotional. My father wasn't well. Stress was affecting his health. Financial problems were piling up. Things were getting worse, faster than they could manage, and beneath all the explanations was the same quiet expectation. I would come. I would fix it. I would be the one to hold everything together, just like always, but something had changed in me during those long nights in the hospital corridor. Something that no apology, no explanation, and no emergency could undo. I didn't respond immediately. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. The next morning, I called them back. My mother answered quickly, as if she had been waiting beside the phone. Finally, she said, relieved, "We need you to. I know what you need." I interrupted gently. There was a pause. My father came on the line. "Then you understand the situation." I stood by the window, looking out at a world that kept moving no matter what broke inside it. "Yes," I said, "I understand it very clearly." Another pause, shorter this time, uneasy. My mother softened her tone. "We're your parents. We raised you. We just need support right now." Those words used to move me instantly. Once, they would have been enough to make me drop everything and run, but not anymore. I also needed support. I said quietly, "During my daughter's surgery." Silence filled the line, not the comfortable kind, the heavy kind that forces truth to sit in the open. My father sighed. We didn't realize it was that serious at the time. I told you it was surgery, I said. My voice stayed calm even though my chest tightened. I asked you to sit with her for a few hours. You refused. Another silence. Longer now, this one carried weight. I could almost hear them searching for words that would soften what had already happened. But there are moments where softness cannot repair what absence has broken. My mother spoke again, quieter. We're sorry if you felt alone. That sentence landed differently. Not an apology for what they did. An apology for how I felt. And that distinction mattered more than they understood. I wasn't alone because I felt alone. I said, I was alone because I was left alone. No one spoke for a while. I could hear breathing on the other end. Small sounds of discomfort, realization pressing in slowly, reluctantly. Then my father asked, more carefully this time, so what are you saying? I closed my eyes for a moment. This was the point where old versions of me would have softened, would have rushed to reassure, would have said something like it's okay, just to end the tension. But I didn't. I'm saying I can't be the only person who shows up anymore. I said, not for people who didn't show up for me when it mattered most. The line went completely still. No interruptions, no excuses, no quick defenses, just silence. And in that silence, something shifted not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. They understood, maybe not fully, maybe not the depth of it, but enough to feel it, the imbalance, the consequence. The distance that had quietly formed long before this moment, and was now no longer bridgeable by urgency. My mother's voice came softer than before. We didn't mean to lose you. That sentence almost broke something in me. Because it finally sounded like truth. But truth doesn't always arrive in time to fix what it describes. I know, I said quietly, and I meant it, but I also knew something else, meaning not to lose someone doesn't stop them from being lost. When the call ended, I didn't feel victory. Revenge isn't what it looks like in stories. There was no satisfaction. No sudden relief, no emotional triumph. There was only clarity and distance. That evening, I sat again beside my daughter. She woke briefly, looked at me with sleepy eyes, and smiled when she saw I was still there. Are you staying? She whispered. I held her hand gently. Yes, I said, I'm not going anywhere. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel torn between who needed me. Because the answer had become simple. The ones who stayed when she was fighting for her life were the only ones I would stay for when mine began to change.